So if we take these ideas that I've talked about a little bit further, about the reality simulator, about our perception, we can have a breakthrough that was quite important for me, at least for a phase. And I've said we're in a reality simulator that is meant to give us any experience we want. But we can twist that a little bit by saying, how does the reality simulator function? And what have I explained? We go into separation. We see ourselves as separate beings. Now we look at everything from the perspective of being a separate being. And from that perspective, we want certain things. And you can look at the world and say, why is there conflict between people? Because you have two groups of people. They see themselves as separate beings. They belong to that group and they're different from the other group. And the one group wants something, but in order to get what they want, they have to force the other group. And the other group wants something, and they don't want to be forced by the other group. So now there's conflict. And you can say that this is part of the reality simulator and how it works. But how is it actually working? Well, we can say that the reality simulator is like a cosmic mirror, a large mirror. It's simply mirroring back to humankind what we are collectively projecting into this cosmic mirror. And this can be a little tricky to grasp in the beginning, but you can look at it from your perspective. I had a point where, well, let's go a little bit back. I grew up in a working class family. All of the people in my family, they had a job. And many among my parents' generation, my father and mother, they didn't have the opportunity to get an education. It was difficult when they were young because society was very different. But now in my generation, I had the opportunity to go to school, go to university, get a better job than they had. And they wanted me to do this because naturally parents want their children to do better than they're doing. So their perception was you either have a job or you get an education so you get a better job. But the thought of starting your own business, it didn't occur to them. Nobody in my family did that. So what that basically means is that you grow up with a sense that you have a limited amount of money. You only have a certain amount of money. And there came a point where I started thinking about this, and I found some teachings. You can find many of them out there to talk about positive mental attitude and how you change your perception of money and this and that. And there came a point where I realized that the way I was brought up was I was projecting into the cosmic mirror. You'll always have a limited amount of money because there's a limit to how much money you can make when you're having a job. And I started working on this, and this is not about money or prosperity I want to talk about, but it's just I realized that I had a certain image that I was projecting into the cosmic mirror. And the reason why I talk about the cosmic mirror is you know exactly what happens with a mirror. It only reflects back to you what you're showing it. So let's say you're walking down the street one day and you see a man who's sitting on a bench, and he's sitting in front of a mirror. He has holding a mirror in his hand. He looks very, very frustrated. And you say, what's going on here? So you go up and ask him, what's happening? What are you doing? And he says, well, I want the mirror image to smile at me with a frown on his face. I want the mirror image to smile, but it won't do it. And you're stepping back, oops, I'm not getting in the middle of this one, because you realize he's fundamentally misunderstood a basic principle. If you want the mirror image to smile at you, you have to smile at the mirror. If you're frowning at the mirror, you want it to send back something else? Doesn't make sense, right? But nevertheless, we have all been brought up, programmed over many lifetimes to think that one day we can get the mirror to reflect back something else than what we're sending out. Why do you think every religion on the planet says, do unto others what you want them to do to you? And why do you think most of the religious people on the planet don't follow what their own religion says? It's because they are trapped in this illusion of separation. What does it mean, do unto others? Well, it means if you want a certain situation where other people are treating you well, start by treating other people well. Why? Because if you treat other people well, you are projecting into the cosmic mirror that you want to be treated well. You want to live in a world where everybody's treating each other well. And what can the mirror do but mirror this back to you? But what are people doing when they don't grasp this? They are projecting. I want to be able to treat people any way I want, but they should still treat me well. People should do something to me that I'm not doing to them. So they are trying to get the mirror image to smile at them while they are frowning at the mirror. They're trying to get other people to treat them in a way that they're not willing to treat others. It's cognitive dissonance. It can never work. It's an unrealistic approach to life. So as spiritual people, we of course, as I've said before, we find the spiritual path. And most people, when they find the spiritual path, myself included when I was younger, you think that by finding this spiritual teaching and becoming a member of this spiritual movement, you have been magically transformed into this spiritual person that's very different than what you were before. But the reality is, you were in a certain state of consciousness when you found the spiritual path. And you have a certain background, you have a certain upbringing, you have a certain attitudes and worldviews about the world. And you take that with you when you enter a spiritual movement. You can be transformed over time, but you're not transformed by just entering. So it's wise to look at how does the approach we have in the world cause us to look at spiritual movements. And I've seen many, many people, especially in my younger years, that they had this idea that by being a member of this movement, by studying the teachings, practicing the practice, doing all the things that were prescribed, they would find some magic way to transform their outer lives, their outer situation. They would attract riches, for example, lots of money to them. A lot of spiritual people dream about being able to focus on the spiritual aspect of life, not having to spend so much time on a job. I understand it, it's ununderstandable, but it's not going to happen unless you change your consciousness. Unless you change the image you are projecting into the cosmic mirror. And how do you change the image you're projecting? Well, what are you projecting the image through? What creates the image you're projecting into the cosmic mirror? Your subconscious selves. A subconscious self is a filter. I used the analogy earlier that you can compare this to a film projector. The light you are receiving from your higher self is the white light that's coming from the light bulb in the film projector. And you have a film strip in the identity mind, one in the mental mind, one in the emotional mind, and on each level there are these separate selves. So what is it that's displayed on the screen? It doesn't depend on the white light. It doesn't depend on the screen. The screen can display any image. Right? This is the cosmic mirror. The cosmic mirror can, for you, display any image you want to have. But it can only display what is projected on it through the film strips in your mind. But we think, just like so many people in the world think, that we can put the cart before the horse. We can do something to the screen. If you want to change what's displayed on the screen, right, how effective is it to start working with the screen? Start painting a picture on the screen. It might affect what's displayed on the screen, but you're still having the same images projected on the screen. Wouldn't it be much more effective to go to the projection room and say, hey, let me change the film strip in my own mind? I mean, it's obvious when you see it, right? But we were brought up not to see this because the vast majority of the people in the world, they are trying to change what's displayed on the movie screen without changing the film strip in their own minds. They're trying to get other people to do to them without them having to change what they do to others. They're trying, the groups of separate people, they're trying to get an advantage for themselves, even if it causes a disadvantage to others. And that's why you have conflict. because the other group is, of course, trying to do the same thing. And so this was a breakthrough for me when I had this concept of the cosmic mirror. And it caused me, of course, to start looking at how I approached life in general. And just to give an example of that, in 2002, I gave up having a regular job, and I focused entirely on doing spiritual teachings, writing about spiritual teachings, creating websites, and so on. And in the beginning, I didn't have much income. I had to have some income selling books and doing conferences and so on. And in the first year, I was really concerned about, is this going to work? Can I really survive this way? But it came a day after the first year or so where I suddenly realized I had been worried about money for the last year. But I'd always had enough. I had a roof over my head. I had a food to eat. I had a computer to work on, and so forth. So it suddenly hit me that me worrying about money really hadn't done anything to improve my situation. Worrying about money didn't improve my situation. It didn't give me more money. No matter how much I worried, it didn't give me more money. But the reality was that I had enough money so I could continue doing the work I was doing. And I realized, oh, but this is actually what I want. I don't want to be a millionaire. I don't want to have a huge amount of money. I don't want to have a huge house. I just want to have enough money to survive so I can focus all of my attention and energy on doing my spiritual work. And so I thought, well, since this has actually happened in the last year, why should I worry? So I made a conscious decision to stop worrying. And since then, I've actually had more money come in. Not that I am rich or anything, but I've had a situation for the past 20 years where I could say, I don't have to worry about making money because I have enough money that I can focus on doing my spiritual work. And there are many other aspects of this, but the basic idea here is this. There comes a point where it can be very helpful for you to look at, what am I projecting? What is the image I'm projecting into the cosmic mirror? And this can have layers, right? Because you can say, you can come to the point where you realize that you might be projecting one image with a conscious mind. For example, I have had many people who believe that if you adopt a positive mental attitude, if you create a treasure map that shows the house you want to live in, the car you want to have, and you keep projecting this out every day by looking at this treasure map, you will eventually get it. But I've also met, I'm not saying it doesn't happen to some people, but the vast majority of people who have tried this, they didn't get what they wanted. They didn't get what they were projecting out. And so many people get discouraged, say, oh, it's just nonsense, it didn't work. But it's not actually true. There is some reality to it. But what people are overlooking is that you may be projecting one image with a conscious mind that this is what you want. But you're not only projecting with your conscious mind, you're also projecting with your subconscious mind. And your subconscious mind may have other images that it's projecting at the same time. So you're sending a mixed message into the cosmic mirror. So what's the mirror going to reflect back to you? Is it going to reflect back your conscious message or your subconscious message? And in most cases, you'll find that the subconscious message is stronger than the conscious one. And basically, you can say, if you're following many of these programs, what are you trying to do? Well, you have a strong computer program, separate selves. You have a strong program in the subconscious mind that's projecting that you don't have enough money. Now you're trying to create with a conscious mind another program, another self that predicts you have money, you have abundant money. But they're obviously clashing. So not only is it a matter of which one is the stronger, but the real question is, what have you actually accomplished by trying to go through this process? What you have accomplished is you have built another separate self. So now you have more separate selves than you had before, meaning you are less free. What is the higher approach to this? Is this to say, I'm not going to try and build a conscious program that will attract to me riches, because it's natural that I have enough to sustain myself and to do what I'm here to do. Jesus actually made an interesting remark there. He says, fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. So when you are in alignment with your life plan, your higher self, you're going to have enough to do what you're here on earth to do. So why don't you have it? Because you have some subconscious selves that are projecting a different message. They're actually projecting that they want to live in a world where there's lack. They want you not to have enough money. That's the subconscious message you're sending out. So trying to override this by creating another program is just going to create more tension, more stress in your mind. It's not going to give you peace of mind. So the efficient way is to look at the subconscious mind, look for these programs you have, whether it's about money or many other things, or relationships, for example, and deal with them. I've seen people who they can't find a partner, or they go from partner to partner and they're always disappointed. And they're projecting out that there must be a way, and they sometimes use the spiritual path to say, there must be a way to find a spiritual partner. But what are they projecting out subconsciously? They might be projecting out that from the perspective of a separate self, I want a partner who lives up to all my demands and fulfills my demands. Right? And that's why you have an entire industry out there designed to create not only these sex robots, but these robots that can be programmed to be exactly what people want. You have an entire dating industry that's geared towards pairing people up with a perfect partner. But the reality is that people are projecting an unrealistic expectation because they dream about having a relationship with another human being who has free will and who has their own perception filter. And you can't expect them to totally accommodate you. It's not realistic, right? So let's just take one more example of how this tricks people. You could say, I don't know, I talk about I was in Israel. And so you can say that the Jews are consciously projecting they want to live in a peaceful world. Of course they do. That's what they're projecting, right? They want to live in a peaceful world. And the Arabs are projecting, we want to have peace. We want to have prosperity. But what are they also projecting? They are projecting the Jews are projecting the reason we don't have peace is because of the Arabs and the Palestinians. And what are the Arabs projecting? The reason we don't have peace is because of the Jews. Right? So consciously they are sending out one message. But what are they sending out subconsciously? They are actually sending out into the cosmic mirror the message, I want to live in a world where there's conflict. I want to be seen as belonging to a special group of people that's superior to this other group of people. And what you are projecting out is, you want to be the superior group, and you can only be that if you are opposed by another group. And the Jews have that need from a certain perspective, the Arabs have it from another perspective, they both have the need to be the ones that's superior. So they have attracted each other because they both want the same experience, that they are opposed by somebody. And when you see this, when I saw this, it was like the scales fell from my eyes, and I got again a whole new perspective on human history and why we have conflicts on the planet. And I also, as I always do, I looked at myself and said, do I have elements of this? And of course we do. We are brought up with it over many lifetimes. And you simply have to, step back from it. I know quite a lot of spiritual people in Russia. I have good friends in Russia. And they are, of course, very disturbed by the current situation. But the question you have to ask yourself if you're a spiritual person living in Russia is, am I seeing myself as a Russian who's following the spiritual path? Or am I seeing myself as a Russian who grew up, am I seeing myself as a spiritual person who grew up in Russia? And then it opens up some perspective that perhaps you chose to be embodied in Russia because you want to help pull the collective consciousness to a higher level. But that's a whole other discussion. All I'm trying to say here is we have to look at our cultural background and look at the tendencies that are there. And then we have to say, as spiritual people, we have to free ourselves from this so that we are not projecting into the cosmic mirror the same message that our peer group is projecting. Because then, of course, we will be pulled into the same spiral, the same vortex that they're pulled into. And that can't give us spiritual freedom. It can't take us beyond a certain level. So it's not only a matter of questioning our individual perception, it's a matter of questioning the collective perception we were brought up with.